In this lesson, we're going to break down the interface of Unity. Alright, so the Unity interface is very nice, very clean, very easy to understand, but we're going to talk about the major features of each section so that way you know what to expect as we go throughout the interface. So starting right up at the top, we have the menu bar. The menu bar is going to hold a lot of the common actions that you would see in most software packages. So you're going to be able to save your files, open files, you'll be able to create game objects, add components to game objects, and then you can even access windows that are not part of the default interface. Below that is the toolbar. The toolbar is going to give you access to manipulation tools and being able to play your game. You could even pause your game while you're playing that to do some debugging. And then you can also access things like your layers and your layout, so you can modify how things look inside of the scene view as well as modify the way the interface looks. Now going on from here, we have the hierarchy. The hierarchy is very, very important because it shows you all of the game objects that are in your scene, and it also shows how certain game objects are parented to other game objects, which is going to be really important, and I'll show you how this works as we go throughout this course. Then we have the scene view. The scene view is the main window into your game. This is where you're going to be doing all of your work. You're going to be manipulating objects, moving them, rotating them, scaling them around, and you'll do set dressing, lots and lots of time inside of the scene view. The scene view also has some options that you can see here. You can change the way the shading works. So by default you'll be in shaded. You can switch it over to wireframe in case you need to see the wireframe. You can even mix the two together by using shaded wireframe. And there are lots of other options in here as well. You can also change your view from 3D, which is what you see here, to 2D. And if you were to choose that 2D project from the beginning at the launcher, you would see something that looks like this. You can simply turn that off just by clicking on that button again. And then you also have the ability to turn on and off certain features inside of the scene view. Now behind the scene view, we also have the game view, and this is going to show us what we would actually see through the camera that is in our scene. As you can see, there is a main camera in the hierarchy, and so this is what we're viewing. Now anytime that you're in the scene view and you hit play, it will automatically switch to the game view. Now the game view also has some options that you can pick at this point as well. So let's say that you wanted to maximize the screen whenever you're playing that. It would get rid of the rest of the interface and completely show you just the game itself. To turn that off, just simply click on that and there you go. You could also choose your aspect ratio of your game. So let's say that you wanted to create something like a widescreen, or your standalone options for your resolution, that will be there as well. I like to keep it at free aspect for right now. Now moving on from the scene view and the game view, let's go on to the inspector. The inspector is where all of your properties are going to live based on what you have selected in your scene view. So if I select my light, you can see that I have all of these different properties that that pertain to the light itself. So I can change things like the color of the light, I can change its intensity, I can even change its shadow type. Lots and lots of different options to go through. The main one that you will probably use quite a bit is going to be the transform. This one will be in all of the game objects that you see in your scene. So for example, the camera has the transform component here. So inside of the inspector, you can also add components. Components are things that modify the game object that you currently have selected. So let's say that I wanted to add a rigid body effect to a certain object. I would be able to add a rigid body component, okay, just by clicking on that button. And I'll show you how to use components a little later as well. So moving on from the inspector, we have the project browser. Project browser is going to be really, really important because this holds all of your assets that are in the scene. Or actually in your project, excuse me, not in the scene, but in your project. So any game object that we're going to have in our game is going to live right in here. Now we don't have anything in here right now. We're going to talk about how to bring in assets and how to manage those and keep our project organized in the next lesson. Now with the project browser, we also see console. Console is really important because this is going to help you debug your game. So if there are any messages or any warnings that come up, or even errors that come up, they will show up here in the console. This is a really important tab to have open, but you don't have to if you don't want. If you want to close this down, or any of these tabs for that matter, you can simply click on this little button right here. It looks like 3 lines with an arrow next to it. You have some options for each of these windows. You can open it, you can maximize it, close it, or you can even add a tab to this section. So let's talk about modifying the interface. Modifying the interface is very easy inside of Unity. The first way that I want to show you is using presets. So right up here at the top you'll see layout, and you can choose a preset that you want to use. So let's say that we want to do the 2x3. You'll see how that changes up your interface. This might be something that you are more accustomed to and something that you prefer. You can switch it back to default at any time. And then we also want to be able to have the ability to modify it to exactly the way that we want. So let's say that you want to have the animator window come up. What you would do is go up to Window, and you would say, all right, where is animation? Okay, let me go ahead and bring up animation here. And I want this to live right down here where the project and the console are. I'm going to go ahead and left click and drag on the tab itself, and you'll see that it begins to snap into certain areas. Now at this point you would just drop it right wherever it snaps in your desired location. So I've dropped it right here, and you'll see that it is now coupled with all of these tabs. If you want to break that off and set it somewhere else, all you'll have to do is simply left click and hold the tab, drag that around, and put it in your desired location. It will give you a preview of where that's going to go. Okay, so let's say that I wanted to break it off of that. Now at any time if you want to close a tab, you simply left click on this and hit close tab. Now I'm not going to do that just yet because I want to show you how to save a custom interface. So let's say that you've modified this the way that you like. You can simply come up here to the layout tab, and you can save layout. Clicking save layout, it will give you a prompt to where you can give it a specific name. And so I'm just going to call this example 1 and hit enter. And you'll see example 1 is now listed, and then it's also going to be in your list as well. Now at any time that you want to delete one, you just simply hit delete, and then you tell which one you want to delete. In this case, example 1. Close that down, and then we're going to switch this back to our default, and there we go. We're going to use the default throughout this course just to make things consistent for you and across the project files. So now that we have talked about the interface and how to use that, there's one more thing that I want to cover before we go on into our next lesson. That's actually how to navigate inside of the viewport. This is pretty easy to do. Inside of the viewport, you'll hold down the Alt key and the left mouse button, and this will allow you to orbit around an object or the pivot point. If you hold down Alt and the middle mouse button, that will allow you to pan. Alt and the right mouse button will allow you to zoom. And then if you hit F on the keyboard, that will allow you to frame in on the object that is selected. Framing is going to be very important because if there's a time that you want to orbit around a specific object, you hit F and then Alt and the left mouse button, and it will orbit around that object. Now you can also zoom in and out using the scroll wheel. So if you scroll back, that will zoom out, and scroll forward, that will scroll in. So that is the main users settings that we use for navigating inside of the viewport. Now you can also use what I like to call a first-person control for navigating the viewport. This can be done by holding down the right mouse button, and then you can look around with the camera in place. But with the right mouse button held down at the same time, you can use W to move forward, S to move backward, A to move to the left, and then D to the right. And then you can always move your mouse to steer in whatever direction you want to go. Now at any time that you want to speed up this process, you can hold down Shift while moving, and that will speed up. Alright, great. So now that we have learned about the interface, let's go ahead and move on into our next lesson where we're going to start bringing in assets, and I'm going to talk to you about file management and project organization.